All right, let's go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everyone to today's session. We'll be talking about some new tips and tricks that we have for Stratum. Some things that, well, we ask you if you did you know how to do some of these things. So that's kind of what we'll go through today. We're going to look at just different things that we feel will provide value to you in terms of using the Stratum product. As you can see, we'll be talking about the glossary, how to use the new KPIs features. We'll look at filter manager, specifically how to exclude things from your view. Uh, a new powerful, well, kind of new. It's been around a little while, but now you can assign it to specific measures in your view. Drill to view feature to drill to more views from another view. We'll look at dashboard mapping and gauges, some things that might be there that you did not know. How to reconfigure your measures on rows gives your view a different look and feel. We'll take a look at some user display options, some attribute filtering options, and sorting options. So a lot of things to cover, maybe a few more things that you didn't know as well. This is the Stratum Data Hub. So today we'll be all over the place, kind of, in terms of how to use the interface today, specifically. So really on this side of the Data Hub, we can see that we'll be using the web-based product to get to the features that we'll be talking about today. So let's dive right into it. We'll go ahead and run a view and look at the glossary and how we can use specific elements of the glossary to tell users about the view, different elements of the view. So here we have the latest version of Stratum. We're running 7.5. And right away, the users won't see anything per se in the glossary unless they enable the glossary itself. And to do that, you can see a little more info button here on the right-hand side, just under the arrows there. If you turn that on, then the glossary gets enabled. So we can see now that the glossary is available with the little informational bubbles on each element within the view, specifically for actual sales. If we wanted to know a little bit more information about that measure, we can then actually click in on it, and the glossary will tell us that it, reflects the value of sales, that it's bucketed by invoice date. We can see that it's net of returns. So good information to have as a user, so I don't assume anything. We can see that now you have this capability of um, adding information to the application. Now, this typically would be a more of administrative function in terms of adding to the description. As you can see, I can go into it and I can actually change the description or add to it and make the necessary changes. So it's a great way to describe your environment so that users, if they have questions, you might be able to actually answer some of those questions um, just through the glossary itself. The glossary also gives us some more information about the measure, um, whether it's the different features that might be enabled or disabled. There's information about when it was last updated, so we have a good feel for how fresh or stale the data is. So it provides a lot of really good information. And that's just for the measure of actual sales. If I wanted to see one for the calculation, as you can see, there's a description for that as well that we've added so that we know what the calculation is doing. So again, you'll have the opportunity to document, these things accordingly. It goes out to the dimension, of course, if I wanted to see what product brand dimension does, where it comes from. We can see that we've got a little bit more information about what this dimension does, and obviously we see it's a way to group products by brand. and it's driven from the master file within the ERP. In your world, you can be even more descriptive if you want to include the actual table name and the field name in which it's coming from your ERP system. Certainly, you can elaborate upon that a little bit more here as well. You can even go into the individual members. If we see here tip top, I can click in on that and notice that I get more information about that level, who the product brand manager is. These are all called attributes, and that allows me to actually gain access to these attributes in a very easy and quick fashion. Certainly, I can bring those in as columns of data, but the glossary provides a nice, quick, easy way to get to access to all the attributes for that level. And for the administrators, and you can always turn it off if you don't want to see the bubbles any longer. Of course, you can disable that, and you're really back to square one at that point. For the administrators out there, they can actually go into the menu in the upper right-hand corner of this version, and they can actually go into manage things, and we can see that. I'm sorry, you don't need to go to manage things. The Stratum glossary menu is right under the menu. So when you click on the menu up here, some might call that a hamburger menu. You can then click on the glossary, and the full-blown glossary menu will come up to the screen, and you can certainly move it over here as needed. And then I get an index as well. So if there's something I'm looking for specifically, for instance, maybe something customer related, I can do a search on the word customer, and it will allow me to see all the elements that have the word customer in it. So, if I wanted to define different elements here, I can go in and, maybe pick a specific element. And then here we can see that I can go in and start writing a description for that particular dimension. So, this is a great way for the administrators to go in and manage the glossary and without having to go to in every view, which obviously you could do it that way as well. But this is a great menu to get it access to everything within the environment without having to run any views. Okay, so that's the glossary menu. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about the KPIs. So there was another feature that's been added to one of the recent releases here, specifically this release, I believe. And this allows you to change the measure to a different display, if you will. If you, for instance, I can come to any one of these columns of data. For instance, I can see here that we have a rolling scenario, July through September, and I can right click that column header. And if I go to properties, I can see that I can display this value. It's already default to display as a sum. So it's basically summing up my months from July through September, and it's showing me the actual summed amount, which is by default what you would want to see. However, you can go in and change that to the different features that we provided for you. For instance, if I want to see the average for those months, I can then very quickly select average, and it will then show me the average of those July through September months. Okay. And then I can compare that to my open order or my current month sales, which is this column here. I can get a better feel for whether I'm going to meet or exceed certain averages. Maybe I'm halfway through the month. If that's the case, it's looking pretty good. Here's the total down here. So I can see that 31,000 is the total of the average. And I can see that my total currently for the current month is 24,800. So I guess it all depends on where in the current month I'm at to really kind of say whether this is a good or a bad thing. So you have these capabilities. Again, you can come back into the properties menu. If I wanted to see, instead of average, maybe I want to see the maximum value of the months involved. And then I could see, the big top hitting amounts that will bubble up to the top now. So that's my max amounts for those specific months that are in my time range. All right. So kind of cool. You can go in and instead of having to introduce a calculation and write specific syntax to get an average going, now you don't necessarily have to do that any longer. You can just pick your different KPI options here, and then then you can build upon that as well. If you do an average column, you might want to rename the column header, where you can go into again back into properties in the caption expression, and I can put maybe average into the column header as well. And I could hard code that in so that it looks like that. If I evaluate that, it'll show me a quick preview of what that would look like within the column header. All right. So the new KPIs that's available, and then also the count function, we made that available too. So if you want to add in a count for instance, maybe I'm at my customer level, and maybe I want to add a count for customer products. So if I add in a calculation here, I can see that under Stratum viewer functions, I have a new option to use my count member function, and this will count my, in this case, products that I have for sales, which I would need to tell it, what to base that count on. And I'm going to do it based on my year-to-date number, January through September. Okay. And then I can give it a format. Of course, it's going to be a number. It's going to be a whole number. And then I can fill it in with a color if I want to, make it stand out a little bit. Um, and then give it like a SKU count column header, right? So I can type that in, and that's what it would say um, as my column header. Okay, so once you fill that stuff in and you're comfortable with the syntax, I can go ahead and click OK to that, and it will then add in my SKU count column here. I can drag and drop that to the very beginning if I want to, and now I've got my SKU count by customer. Here we can see Wilder Foods. If I sort this, I can then see the top accounts in terms of SKU count. If I drag and drop product onto the uh, top account, I can see that it's still telling me 63, which is it's accurate. That's obviously we are selling 63 distinct unique items to this account. My row count will say 64 only because I've got a grand total down at the bottom. So that counts as a row too. So if I go back, maybe if I flip this around, now I've got my lower looking accounts in terms of the SKU count, and I could see the items that I'm selling, but probably more importantly was which items that are not on this list, and certainly I can get to that as well. Um, Maybe if I want to exclude a specific account from this view, well, I can do that by adding in a filter. So if I wanted to do an exclusion, I would suggest going to your filter manager here in the view menu. And I can go ahead and open that up. And then here I can select the customer that I want to exclude from the view. So in this case, I'll go out and search for a specific customer. We'll say Maple Tree. So we'll go out and look for the word maple. We can see there's Maple Tree Foods. I'll go ahead and select them. And notice that I've got a little pull down menu to exclude them. So I'll go ahead and select that. All right, I click OK, and now we can see that they have been excluded from the view. So that's a great way to, instead of filtering to include things, well, certainly you can use the filter manager to exclude things from your view as well. If I go back into the filter manager, maybe I want to add another account to the exclusion, and certainly you can do that too. So now I'm excluding 4 accounts, and making sure that the exclusion is still on. We can see the 4 accounts now kind of highlighted there, and I click OK. And indeed, now those 4 accounts are gone. As I hover over the filter here, I can see that it's filtered with members exclude for those 4 accounts are certainly highlighted there and excluded from my view. So that's a powerful new feature that's been added to a fairly recent release that you can use to kind of manipulate the data to get rid of things that you don't feel should be included in your view. And so, you can kind of have your users have more control about what they want to not only include, but exclude, of course, as well. Drill to view. So, kind of going back to the agenda, I want to make sure we cover off on all the points. And we could see that the drill to view feature is now something that is available by measure. So, the drill to view feature allows you to drill from one view to another. It's a great tool to show additional detail or maybe spin another story to compare, or to have the user compare the data to something else that may not be visible within this view. Um, I've got a couple of examples within this view. We can see that I've got 2 columns here that are hypertexted. And so if I were to click in on one of those, I feel that, that's going to take me to another view. Well, I know it will. I created the view. So if I look at the properties again on these column headers, we can see that indeed there's a drill down view, and this is going to take me to an open order review. So the concept here is that, that's the current month sales, and then I can take these or to a view that shows them open orders for the months. So they can have a feel for if they're halfway through the month and they see a number there that's concerning, well, maybe there's some open orders out there that haven't shipped yet that will help them gain their quota or get to the number they're looking for. Right. So that's the concept for that one. And then the other one over here, we can see that there's another hypertexted column. And if we can do the properties check on that, we can see that we're linking them to a trended view so they can see the actual data by month. In this view, we can see that it's a time range column, so we really don't know what January through the September numbers are to get to, that 5.2 or that 2.7 mil we see here. Well, we don't know the trend, do we? We just know the sum. So if I were to click on this, it would actually take me to another view that would show me that number trended by month. So that just hopped me to another view that showed me that detail by month. For instance, if I want to see that 12,000, or that's 12 million, sorry, we can click on that and we can see that that number actually is that number there at the 12. There it is right there. So it is 1.2 actually. I think these numbers might be a little off only because of the exclusion. So that can hop, and then the one over here takes you to the open orders. So we can see what the open orders are for that specific customer sold to. We can see for this specific customer sold to, we can see that it passes that filter for Sumter, which is the one we clicked in on. What about Dallas Food Services? What are their open orders? We can see they're about 158,000 in sales. And then I can click in on that. And indeed, that passed over Dallas Food Services to my view. And now we can see that they've got about $200,000 of open orders in the hopper. So, that'll help build up that number to roughly around 400,000 if we get those orders shipped out. So, yeah, I don't know. Something. Oh, I see. It's actually filtering on our brand there, Southern Sweet brand. Let's get rid of that filter. If we get rid of that filter there, we can see now the numbers are footing there. We see. So we're basically just taking the user from that. And normally I just do this by brand. There's a 7.4 for tip top 7.4. What does that look like trended? And now we can see that 7.4 trended out by month. And then you can drill in on the month and you can get to the weeks or the days. So you get a little more detail within this view in terms of how the data is trended Whereas, before here we just get that summed amount. If I want to see home cooking or who is that? Yeah, home cooking coming in at 20 million, farm fresh coming in at 85 million. How does that spread? Here we see that at 85 million, and it's spread across the months like that. So we can kind of see the mix of the months, the seasonality, if you will. So again, now, so I'm taking the user to do two different views here from this one view. And that's because now I'm able to add in the drill down view to each column if I wanted to. So I probably wouldn't recommend it. That's probably a little bit too much, but in this case, I guess you would have to exercise your discretion, in terms of what you feel would be a good number to, think about more of a business reason why you would take them to another view and what you would show. What value from a business perspective. Think about how the business analyst would value, how that would provide value to them. Would be a good exercise to go through. Dashboards. So, some of the new capabilities of the 7.x versions are being able to build dashboards. And so we've done a nice job within our internal development of kind of building out some default dashboards that we've used for our demo data. So you can see you can actually do some mapping. You can aggregate your data and visualize it by map. You can hover over the states in which your sales are located, as you can see, and you'll get some more information about what your sales are there by state. You have the ability to jump to the view to get to the data behind the map. So if I wanted to open the view behind the actual map itself, then I can see the data within the data grid within the view, and then I can drill in on the states, and I can see the different customers by state. If I see something that tickles my fancy, I can drill a little bit further um, and identify the product mix for the specific things that I are the account that I drill in on. So the concept there is to provide a visual to tell a story, and then to have the user give the user a way to get to the data behind the in this case behind the map, so that they can dig a little deeper and gain a little bit more knowledge about not only just what the sales are by state, but who are the customers for that particular state, and what are the products, etc. So the map provides a nice, good starting jumping point to get into that detail. Here are just some other examples of the bar charting capabilities for the dashboard as well, so that you can, kind of build out your dashboard accordingly and mix it up a little bit so that it's visually appealing and diverse. Um, we can see that we can use gauges to represent gross margins. Um, so if I were to use like this and we can see that these different um, business units have a gross margin of 100%, which is not realistic at all because it's demo data, but nevertheless, you could build out these gauges. You can also define your own ranges of where the red point might be for the gauge. I can go in and edit these dashboards and go into more detail in terms of how I would um, format this, how I would customize my range here. So here, as you can see, I can customize that so that my ranges might be a little bit different than what you see here. So this is going from 40, maybe if I want to change that to 60, and then that'll get changed over to a 60 as well. So now I've made my mid range a little bit more tolerant, and my green range a little less tolerant. So yeah, you'll decide what your ranges are going to be for the gauge. So while we're here, as you can see, there's all kinds of wonderful things that you can get into: line, area, column, bar, scatter, pie, mapping, trending, all kinds of wonderful things that you can delve into with the new Stratum dashboarding. So make sure you check that out. If you're running 7.x, you may already have it. So, and to get to it, if you're unfamiliar, again, back to that good old tasty hamburger menu, we can see that if we go under manage things, there we can find the dashboard menu. And that just opens up the dashboard designer, which then you can get to all the dashboard pieces that are already created, and they will show up here, and then you can update those accordingly as needed. If I wanted to make any changes or choose a different font or customization, I, as an administrator, again, only administrators would be able to do this, but I can go in and make the necessary changes and build out my dashboards. And these things, they all have URLs behind them. So if I open the specific dashboard in a new tab, we can see that I can copy that URL and then I can use that to distribute the dashboard within Viewer. I can make it the home page. I can build a link to it. As a matter of fact, here in our Stratum demo, we can see that I'm using links down here to link customers to the dashboard where they can just click in on the dashboard and it opens up in a different browser session in a new tab. Okay, so those are the things that you can do with the dashboarding capabilities. And again, check your version. You may already have it, and there are no licensing restrictions. So, have at it. And if you have any questions, certainly you can contact me and I can help you through some things. Measures on rows. So a very simple thing to show, but any view that you run, you can pivot the measures within the view to show on your rows, and it might give you a little different look and feel. So going back to my comparative sales view, if I were to open up my View Explorer and go to my measure items there, and go to my properties menu, we can see that I can change the axes of the measure items to rows instead of columns. So once I apply those changes, as you can see now, the measures are now going downward in a vertical direction as opposed to horizontal. And it lends itself kind of to a um, sorry, I had a little hiccup there. So yeah, that pretty simple, but kind of effective, in terms of how you might want to build out your view. Maybe you want to show this in a dashboard and you only have X amount of real estate in terms of width, might be a good option for you. If you ever want to turn it back to your columns, certainly, you could switch that back and yeah, get back to where you were before. So simple, right? But being able to, first of all, open your View Explorer. If you're not familiar with the View Explorer, it's a great tool to work with the objects within your view. And if again, this is found under the Measure Item folder. Right click and go to Properties on that. And you can change out your columns or your measures to show up on rows or columns, depending on which one you choose. Pretty simple. And while we're here, there's other user display options. So right here on the file menu, we can see up there, there's an icon that represents a wrench where you can go in and go into the display options. And, I wanted to go into this only because, the users can go in and kind of decide, what they want to see. Do they want to use paging? Or turn that off? Do they want to lock in the column rows and headers so that they can see the data as they page through a lot of detail? Or if they turn off the paging, they can then see, thousands of rows of data. And if they lock the rows and columns, then they won't lose their context when they start scrolling downward. They can override the view page size that's been given to them. If they wanted to, to show more than 100 rows at a time when they're using paging, they can control that too. They can show the data grid or turn it off to give it a more of a cleaner look. Um, well, that's turning off. That's completely turning off the data grid. I don't think you want to do that. So we'll turn that back on. I think there's a way. I think you can get rid of the yeah. It's under the grid format. You can kind of choose and the colors and do some things there in terms of the rows and coloring options there. Um, Data, do we want to show totals? You can turn on all others here if you use filtering and you want to see all others show up. That's a nice one as well. Repeat, if maybe I want to repeat item labels, so as I drill in on them, they get repeated down. So it gives the view a little bit a different look and feel, almost like a flat file approach, look and feel. And certainly I can toggle that back off if I don't like the way that looks. And now it just doesn't repeat that particular drilled on item there. So that's all that really does there. It kind of repeats things for you. The all others, it's a nice one to use for filtering. So, for instance, if I were just to filter and show my top, uh, maybe do a top end on one of my data columns, just showing top five accounts. And now I got all others break there for, just to see, everything else broken out or summarized under one row of all others there. So I could see my top five accounts based on my filter that I applied here for my data item. And then I've got that again, with having the all others on. If I turn that off, that row just goes away, right? So I don't get to see that any longer. So user display options, go in there, kind of play around with some things. You got different options for exporting the data. Again, the grid format's going to give you that different that different look and feel. Um, do I want the border to show up? Do I, what do I want it to look like? I think this is what I was looking for, is to give it more of a naked, look and feel without lines. So you can really kind of manipulate your look and feel here with the user display options there. And it's a pretty simple menu to kind of go through. So it's not too overwhelming. Finally, attribute filtering and sorting. So this is new. So if we go, gosh, I'm just going to run the view over again. I've done so much. I'm going to switch this to product because I know we have a lot of attributes that are numeric. So, and that'll help me tell my story here. I'm going to add in an attribute for one of my products. It's going to be list price. So I want to add that in. So now I've got that as a column of data, and there it is. So a couple of things that we've done here is you can now go to properties on that column and you can format it as a number. So it will behave like a number. So as you may or may not know, attribute fields are textual. They're not numeric by default. So this is a way for the user to switch it to a number so that when they sort and filter on it, it behaves like a number. And you can do this at a global level, admins. You can actually go through a menu, your dimensions menu, and you can dictate which attributes are numeric in nature so that when the user, such as I did here, I ran the view and it's already switched over to number for me. So I don't really have to do it. But here's where you can see that if I wanted to switch it, I can go ahead and do that here within the view if it's not behaving properly. And by behaving properly, I mean, if I were to do a sort on this, I would expect, the numbers to get larger up here, right? To behave properly, right? If I were to see the ascending sort here, we can see that it's behaving properly, right? It's accurate, right? If this were textual, let's play with this. It probably won't. Yeah, see, it's not even doing it right. So that was a problem, prior to this version. not necessarily a problem, but you had to, you had to create a calculation to actually do it properly and convert it to a number. Whereas now you can just do it here and it'll now, as you can see, sort properly. Or if you want to filter on it, you can now filter on it, show me all my list price that are greater than um, 90, $90. So, and there you have it. Okay. So that allows you, and for the admins, if you don't know where to go, if you go into the good old hamburger menu, we can go in and manage things and under dimension, sorry, under the dimension menu is where you'll go to set a lot of this stuff up. So if I go to like my product menu here, we can see that if I expand product, we can see that all the attributes show up here, and that will allow me to dictate which ones are numeric, which I've already done in my environment. And as you can see it, and then you would just save that away so that when the next time the users run that view, it'll they don't have to worry about it. It'll just sort and filter properly for that attribute column.